The Great Hall of Varith Prime was made of crystal that had taken 10,000 years to grow. Light from distant stars passed through its walls and made patterns on the floor like frozen music. Here, in this ancient place, the rulers of the galaxy had gathered to decide the fate of a young species called humanity. High Chancellor Morvith stood at the center of the hall. He was tall, even for an Athrani, with skin the color of dark stone and eyes that glowed like dying embers. He had ruled his people for 300 years, and in all that time, he had never felt fear. But when he thought about the humans, something cold moved in his chest. "They have been among the stars for only 200 years, he said, his voice filling the crystal chamber. In that time, they have spread to 40 worlds. They build ships faster than we can count them. They breed faster than we can believe. And they fight with a madness that we cannot understand." Around him sat the representatives of 12 species. The Varathi, with their 6 arms and calculating minds. The Kelthari, whose bodies were made of living metal. The Orani, who communicated through colors that rippled across their skin. All of them had ruled this galaxy for 50,000 years. All of them had grown comfortable in their power. Elder Vethus of the Varathi leaned forward. His 6 eyes blinked in sequence as he processed information. "The humans refused our treaty terms. They said they would not accept second-class status in the Concordat. They demanded equal representation." "Equal," said High Chancellor Morvith. The word came out like poison. "They have existed for the blink of an eye, and they demand to be our equals." The Kelthari representative made a sound like grinding metal. "We have studied their history. They are violent beyond reason. They have fought thousands of wars among themselves. They created weapons capable of destroying their own world, and they used them on their own people. This is precisely why they must be stopped," Morvith said. "Now, while they are still weak, in another 100 years, they will be too strong. In another 1,000, they might rule us all." The vote was taken. It was unanimous. War would be declared in 30 galactic cycles. This would give the Concordat time to gather its fleets, to plan its strategies, to crush the humans so completely that they would never rise again. What none of them knew was that a small device, no bigger than a grain of sand, was hidden in the crystal wall behind them. This device had been placed there 3 years ago by a human spy who had disguised himself as a maintenance worker. Every word spoken in that chamber traveled across the stars to a ship called the Silent Dawn, which was hidden in the debris field of a dead star. Commander Taiho Park listened to the recording for the 3rd time. He sat alone in his quarters, his face lit by the blue glow of the screen. He was 42 years old, with gray appearing at his temples and lines around his eyes that came from too many sleepless nights. He had spent his entire adult life preparing for this moment. He picked up his communicator and spoke a single phrase. "Wake the Admiral." 2 hours later, Taiho stood in the command center of the Silent Dawn. Around him were the people who would decide humanity's fate. Admiral Unikong sat at the head of the table. She was 38 years old, the youngest fleet commander in human history, with sharp eyes and a mind that worked faster than any computer. She had earned her rank through brilliance and courage, and she had never lost a battle. "Play it again," she said. They listened to High Chancellor Morvath's speech once more. When it ended, silence filled the room. 30 cycles, said Captain Minho Lee. He was a big man with a kind face, but his hands were covered in scars from years of combat. "That gives us time to evacuate civilians, to prepare defenses." No, said Taiho. "That is what they expect. They expect us to be afraid. They expect us to run." Admiral Eunice stood up. She walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 12 species were preparing to destroy her people. They thought humans were weak. They thought humans were primitive. They did not understand what humans truly were. "For 200 years we have played their game," she said quietly. "We have followed their rules. We have accepted their insults. We have watched them treat us like children who wandered into an adult's world." She turned to face her officers. "They have given us a gift. They have told us exactly what they plan to do. Now we will show them what we plan to do." She looked at Taiho. "How long do we need?" All strike teams are already in position, he said. We have been preparing for 5 years. We can move in 12 cycles. Minho stared at him. 12. They haven't even mobilized their fleets yet. They won't see us coming. That is the point, said Admiral Yuna. They think they are hunters. They do not realize they are prey. She pressed a button on the table, and a map of the galaxy appeared in the air above them. Thousands of red dots marked Concordat military positions. Hundreds of blue dots, much smaller and harder to see, marked human assets that had been secretly placed throughout enemy territory over the past decade. Operation Silent Thunder, she said. We strike their communications, their shipyards, their command centers, all at once. By the time they understand what is happening, it will already be over. Lieutenant Yunbi Cho, the youngest person in the room, raised her hand. She was small and quiet, with glasses that made her look like a student rather than one of the deadliest cyber warfare specialists alive. Admiral, the Concordat has 12 species, thousands of worlds, millions of ships. We have 40 worlds and a fraction of their numbers. How can we possibly win? Admiral Yuna smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had seen the truth of things and had made peace with it. They have numbers, she said. They have technology. They have 50,000 years of experience. But they have never truly fought for survival. They have never known desperation. They have never faced an enemy who would rather die than surrender. She looked at each person in the room. We are the children of Earth. We have survived ice ages and plagues and nuclear fire. We have survived ourselves. Do you think we will fail now? No one answered. No one needed to. In 12 cycles, we changed the galaxy, Admiral Yuna said. In 12 cycles, they learn what humanity truly is. Go. We have work to do. As the officers filed out, Taiho lingered by the door. He looked at Yuna, and something passed between them. They had known each other for 20 years. They had trained together, fought together, bled together. Do you think we can win? He asked quietly. She did not look away from the stars. I think we have no choice but to win. And that makes all the difference. Outside the window, the universe waited. It did not know that everything was about to change. It did not know that the small, young, desperate species called humanity was about to teach it a lesson it would never forget. The countdown had begun. The freighter. Wandering Star looked like any other cargo ship in the galaxy. It was old and dirty, with rust on its hull and engines that coughed black smoke. It carried mining equipment to the Vorathi shipyards, the same trip it had made 100 times before. The Vorathi inspectors barely looked at it as it passed through their security gates. They did not know that. Captain Minho Lee had spent 3 years building this cover. They did not know that his crew of 12 included some of the most dangerous people humanity had ever produced. And they did not know that hidden in the walls of his ship were enough electronic weapons to bring down an entire civilization. Lieutenant Yunbi Cho sat in a small cabin, surrounded by screens. Her fingers moved across keyboards faster than the eye could follow. She had not slept in 2 days, but her mind was sharp and clear. She was uploading viruses into the Vorathi shipyard systems, viruses that would hide in the code like sleeping snakes, waiting for the moment to wake. How much longer? Minho asked from the doorway. Like 17 minutes, she said without looking up. Then we need to leave before they run their next security check. Minho nodded. He trusted Yunbi completely. She had graduated first in her class at the Defense Academy. She had broken the encryption of 6 alien species before she turned 25, and she had a gift that no computer could match. She understood how alien minds worked. She knew how they thought, how they organized information, how they made mistakes. The viruses are beautiful, she said quietly, almost to herself. They will copy themselves into every system connected to this shipyard. When we give the signal, every ship they are building will forget how to fly. Across the galaxy, similar operations were happening at the same time. Commander Taiho had planned this for 5 years. He had placed human agents on 100 worlds, in 1,000 positions. Some of them had been waiting for years, living ordinary lives, building trust, becoming invisible. On the Athrani homeworld, a man named Sun Wuhan worked as a technician in the Planetary Defense Center. He had been born on Earth, but he had spent the last 7 years pretending to be a refugee from a destroyed human colony. The Athrani felt sorry for him. They gave him a small job, a small apartment, a small life. They never suspected that every night he sent encrypted messages to the silent dawn. Today, Sun Wu walked through the defense center with a toolbox in his hand. He smiled at the guards. He joked with his coworkers. And when no one was watching, he placed a small device behind a wall panel. The device was no bigger than a coin, but it contained technology that the Athrani could not imagine. When activated, it would shut down every defense system on the planet for exactly 11 minutes. That should be enough time, Sun Wu said to himself as he walked away. That should be more than enough. On a space station near the Kelthari border, engineer Jiwan Beek was conducting a safety inspection. She had forged her credentials so perfectly that even the Kelthari could not tell they were fake. She wore the uniform of a Concordat safety official. She carried documents that said she had the authority to inspect any facility she chose. The Kelthari were a proud species. Their bodies were made of living metal, and they believed themselves superior to all organic life. They looked at Jiwan with something like contempt as she walked through their fuel refinery. "This inspection is unnecessary," said the station commander, his voice like scraping steel. "Our systems are perfect." "I am sure they are," Jiwan said politely. "But regulations require me to check. It will only take an hour." It took 45 minutes. In that time, Jiwan placed 12 small bombs in locations that would cause the maximum damage. The bombs were made of organic material that the Kelthari scanners could not detect. When they exploded, this refinery would burn for a month. She smiled as she signed the inspection report. "Everything looks perfect," she said. "You have nothing to worry about." Back on the Silent Dawn, Admiral Yuna watched the reports come in. Green lights appeared on her map one by one, each light representing a successful mission. Yunbi's viruses were in place. Sun Wu's device was ready. Jiwan's bombs were armed. Dozens of other agents had completed their tasks across Concordat space. "We are ghosts," said Colonel Do Yangquan. He stood beside Yuna, watching the same map. He was the commander of the Marine Forces, a man who had fought in 12 battles and won them all. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with something that might have been excitement. "They have no idea we are here. That is the human way," Yuna said. "We learned long ago that the strongest enemy is the one you never see coming. Our ancestors hunted animals 10 times their size. They did not win through strength. They won through patience, through planning, through striking at the perfect moment." She turned to face her officers. The command center was full of people, all of them focused on their tasks, all of them ready to die for their species. "Tomorrow, we begin the final phase," she said. "Minho's team will return to base. Our sleeper agents will go silent. We will pull back and watch and wait. In 8 more cycles, the Concordat will begin to relax. They will think their war preparations are going well. They will not know that we have already beaten them." Major Neon Shin raised her hand. She was the commander of the Stealth Bomber Squadron, a group of pilots who had trained for years in ships that the Concordat did not know existed. "Admiral, what if they discover our agents? What if they find the viruses or the bombs?" "They will not," Yuna said confidently. "We have studied them for 200 years. We know them better than they know themselves. The Athrani are arrogant. They cannot believe that a young species could fool them. The Vorathi trust their technology too much. They cannot imagine that someone could outsmart their computers. The Kelthari think organic beings are inferior. They cannot conceive that a human could walk among them undetected." She paused and looked at the map one more time. So many green lights. So many pieces in position. So many years of planning about to pay off. "They made a mistake when they decided to destroy us," she said quietly. "They should have tried to understand us first. If they had studied our history, truly studied it, they would know that we are never more dangerous than when we have nothing to lose. They would know that we have spent 10,000 years learning how to win wars we should not be able to win. Tai-Ho entered the command center with a tablet in his hand. His face was serious, but there was a light in his eyes that Yuna had not seen in years. Final report, he said. All teams successful. All devices in place. All agents safe. We are ready. Yuna took a deep breath. Outside the window, the stars shone cold and distant. Somewhere out there, 12 species were preparing for a war they thought they would win easily. They were organizing their fleets, planning their invasions, dreaming of the day when humanity would kneel before them. They did not know that the war was already over. They just had not realized it yet. 8 cycles, Yuna said. In 8 cycles, we show them what we are. In 8 cycles, we change everything. She dismissed her officers and stood alone at the window. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel the weight of what was coming. Millions of lives depended on her decisions. The future of her entire species rested on her shoulders. Then she pushed the feeling away. There was no room for doubt. There was no room for fear. There was only the mission. And the knowledge that humanity had faced impossible odds before and survived, they would survive this too. They had no other choice. The moment came at 400 Galactic Standard Time, across the galaxy. In the command centers of 12 species, screens flickered and went dark. Communication channels filled with static. Emergency systems failed. For 12 minutes, the Concordat was blind and deaf and helpless. On the Athrani command station, High Chancellor Morvith was asleep in his quarters when the lights went out. He woke to darkness and silence, a silence so complete that he could hear his own heart beating. He reached for the communication panel beside his bed, but it was dead. He called for his guards, but no one answered. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. He did not know that 100 human Marines were already on his station. They had come in small ships that looked like space debris. They had cut through the hall in places where the sensors were blind. They moved through corridors in perfect silence, using hand signals and night vision equipment that let them see in total darkness. Colonel Doyan Kwan led the assault team. He was 40 years old, with the body of a soldier and the mind of a hunter. He had trained for this mission for 3 years. He knew every corridor of this station, every room, every hiding place. He knew where High Chancellor Morveth slept. He knew how to reach him. His team moved like shadows. The Athrani guards never saw them coming. The first guard died without making a sound, a blade across his throat before he could cry out. The second guard turned at the wrong moment and met a bullet between his eyes. The third guard tried to run, but Doyan caught him and broke his neck with his bare hands. Move, Doyan whispered to his team. We have 9 minutes left. In the space above the Varathi homeworld, Major Neon Shin sat in the cockpit of her stealth bomber. Her ship was called Ghost 1, and it was invisible to every sensor the Varathi had. She had been waiting here for 6 hours, floating in the darkness. Watching the enemy fleet sleep, the signal came as a single flash of light from the silent dawn. Neon smiled and pressed the firing button. Her ship launched missiles that the Varathi had never seen before. They were small and fast and smart, and they knew exactly where to go. They flew through the gaps in the shields. They found the weak points in the armor. They exploded inside the engine rooms and the ammunition stores and the command bridges. Neon watched as 18 Varathi battleships died in less than 30 seconds. They did not fire a single shot in return. They did not even know they were under attack until they were already dead. Ghost 1 to all Ghost units, she said calmly. First wave complete. Moving to secondary targets. Across Concordat space, similar attacks were happening. Flight leader Hajanyu led his squadron against a Kelthari battle group. His pilots were young, most of them under 30, but they flew with the skill of veterans. They had practiced this attack 1,000 times in simulation. Now, they did it for real. Target the command ships first, Hajan ordered. Then the carriers. Leave the transports for last. His squadron swept through the Kelthari formation like a wind through leaves. The enemy ships tried to respond, but their systems were confused. The viruses that Yunbi had planted were doing their work. sending false information to navigation computers, making targeting systems point at empty space. The Kelthari Supreme Commander watched from his flagship as his fleet was torn apart. He screamed orders into a communication system that was not working. He pounded his metal fists against controls that did not respond. He had never known fear before this moment. Now he understood it completely. Back on the Athroni command station, Do-Yan Quan reached High Chancellor Morvath's quarters. He kicked down the door and found the Athrani leader standing in the darkness, his ember eyes glowing with rage and terror. Morvath said, "How is this possible?" "We are human," Do-Yan said simply. "This is what we do." He raised his rifle, but it made a clicking sound. The power cell was empty. He had used too many shots getting here. For a moment, he and Morvath stared at each other in the darkness. Morvath was bigger than Do-Yan. He was stronger. His people were warriors who had conquered 100 worlds. He should have won this fight. But Do-Yan pulled a knife from his belt. It was an old knife, made of earth steel, the same kind that humans had used for thousands of years. Morvath had never seen such a weapon. His people had moved beyond blades long ago. They thought such things were primitive. He learned his mistake in the last moment of his life. The 12 minutes of silence ended. Across the galaxy, communication systems came back online. Screens lit up, emergency channels filled with voices. But the voices were screaming. The Athrani homeworld reported that their defense grid was destroyed and their High Chancellor was dead. The Varathi shipyards reported that every ship under construction had been sabotaged. The Kelthari fleet reported losses so heavy that their supreme commander had taken his own life rather than face the shame. On the silent dawn, Admiral Yuna received the reports one by one. Each report was a victory. Each report was proof that her plan had worked. "Total enemy losses," said Taiho, reading from his screen. 847 capital ships destroyed. 12 command stations captured or disabled. For planetary defense grids offline, estimated enemy casualties, 400,000. Our casualties, 237. Yuna closed her eyes. 237 humans had died tonight. She would remember each of their names. She would carry their memory for the rest of her life, but they had one. Against impossible odds, against enemies who had ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years, humanity had won. "Send the message," she said quietly. "Tell the Concordat that we are coming. Tell them that they started this war, but we will finish it." The message went out across all channels, in all languages, to all worlds. It was simple and direct, and left no room for misunderstanding. The Concordat declared war on humanity. "We have accepted your declaration. Your fleets are destroyed. Your leaders are dead. Your defenses are broken. You have two choices: surrender now and live, or resist and die. The choice is yours. Humanity has spoken." In the command center of the Silent Dawn, the crew stood in silence. They had done something that no one thought possible. They had struck first, struck hard, and struck without warning. They had taken an enemy that thought them weak and shown them the truth. Do-Yan Quan returned to the ship with his Marines. His uniform was covered in Athrani blood, and there was a wound on his arm that he had not noticed until now. But he was smiling. "The High Chancellor is dead," he reported. "The station is ours." Yuna nodded. "Well done, Colonel. Well done, all of you." She looked around the room at the faces of her crew. They were tired and afraid and proud all at once. They had made history tonight. They had changed the galaxy forever. "This is not the end," she told them. "This is the beginning. Tomorrow, the Concordat will try to regroup. They will try to fight back. They will learn that we are not finished with them yet." She stood straighter, and her voice filled with steel. "We are humanity. We do not start wars, but we end them. We do not seek enemies, but we destroy them. We do not ask for mercy, because we do not need it. Remember this night. Remember what we are capable of. And remember that we are just getting started." Outside the window, the stars shone down on a galaxy. It would never be the same. The humans had arrived, and they were not going anywhere. 3 days after the attack, The galaxy was in chaos. The Concordat had ruled for 50,000 years. In that time, no one had challenged them. No one had dared. Now, in less than 1 hour, a species they had thought to be weak and young had torn their power apart like paper. Fleet. Admiral Hyun Woo-seo commanded the main battle group that moved through Athrani space. His ships were not many compared to what the Concordat had once possessed, but they were enough. The Athrani fleet was scattered. Their leaders were dead. Their soldiers did not know what to do, Admiral said, his communications officer. The Athrani Third Fleet is requesting terms of surrender. He was 60 years old, with white hair and a face carved by decades of service. He had joined the Earth's Defense Force when he was 18. He had spent his entire life preparing for a war he hoped would never come. Now, it was here, and he found no joy in it, except their surrender, he said. Treat them with respect. This is not about revenge. This is about survival. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were happening. Human forces appeared in system after system, and everywhere they went, they found enemies who had already lost the will to fight. The attack had been too sudden, too complete, too devastating. The Concordat did not know how to respond to something they had never imagined possible. On Earth, Dr. Min Ji-yoon prepared to broadcast a message to the galaxy. She was not a soldier or a politician. She was a scientist who had spent her life studying alien life forms. But Admiral Yuna had asked her to speak, because Yuna understood something important. The war would not truly end until the Concordat understood why they had lost. Mingi stood in a small studio with cameras pointed at her face. Behind her, a screen would show images to support her words. She was nervous, but she hid it well. She had practiced this speech 100 times. She knew exactly what she needed to say. People of the Concordat, she began, her voice calm and clear. I am Min Ji-yoon, a scientist of Earth. I am speaking to you today not as a conqueror, but as a teacher. I want to help you understand something that your leaders never understood. I want to explain why you lost this war before it even began. The screen behind her lit up with images from human history. Ancient battles, medieval wars, trenches filled with bodies, cities burning under nuclear fire. This is our history, Minji said. For 10,000 years, humanity has been at war with itself. We have invented 1,000 ways to kill each other. We have built weapons that could destroy our entire world. We have experienced horrors that would break any other species in the galaxy. She paused, letting the images speak for themselves. There were photographs of soldiers dying in mud. There were videos of bombs falling on cities. There were paintings of ancient warriors cutting each other down with swords and spears. You looked at us and saw children, she continued. You saw a species that had only been in space for 200 years. You thought we were weak because we were young. You did not understand that our youth was a lie. In terms of warfare, we are older than any of you. We have spent our entire existence learning how to survive enemies who wanted to destroy us. The images changed to show human inventions. Weapons, yes, but also medicine, art, music, literature. Cities built on land that had once been destroyed. Gardens growing in deserts. Children laughing in places that had once known only death. Oh, but we are not just destroyers, Minji said, and her voice grew warmer. We are also builders. Every time we have torn ourselves apart, we have found a way to rebuild. Every war has taught us something. Every tragedy has made us stronger. We have learned that victory without purpose is meaningless. We have learned that strength without wisdom is dangerous. We have learned that the greatest enemies can become the greatest friends. She looked directly at the camera, and it seemed as if she was looking at every person watching on every world. In every corner of the galaxy, you declared war on us because you were afraid. You were afraid of what we might become. Now you know what we are. The question is, what happens next? The broadcast ended. Across the Concordat, billions of beings sat in silence, trying to understand what they had just seen and heard. The Varathi Supreme Council held an emergency meeting that lasted for 16 hours. They analyzed the human attack from every angle. They calculated the strength of the human fleet. They estimated the number of weapons humanity could produce, and in the end, they reached a conclusion that their ancestors would have found impossible to believe. "We cannot win," said Elder Vethus, who had survived the attack on their homeworld. "Even if we gathered every ship we have left, even if we fought with everything we possess, we cannot win. The humans are too fast, too smart, too ruthless. They will not stop until we are destroyed." "Then what do you suggest?" asked another council member. Vethus closed all 6 of his eyes. When he opened them again, there was something that looked like peace in his expression. "We surrender. Not because we are cowards, but because we want to survive. The humans have shown us mercy. They destroyed only military targets. They spared our civilians. They offered us a choice. I say we take it." The vote was close, but surrender won. The Varathi transmitted their acceptance to the human fleet. The Kelthari followed hours later. Their pride had been destroyed along with their fleet. They had believed themselves superior to all organic life. Now they understood that superiority was an illusion. Strength was not about what you were made of. Strength was about what you were willing to do. One by one, the 12 species of the Concordat laid down their arms. Some did it quickly, accepting the new reality. Others hesitated, needing time to process what had happened. But in the end, they all reached the same conclusion. The war was over, and they had lost. On the silent dawn, Admiral Yuna watched the surrender messages arrive. Each one was a victory, but she found no pleasure in them. She was thinking about the future, about what came next. "We broke them," said Taiho, standing beside her. "It is over." "Breaking them was easy," Yuna replied. "Building something new will be hard. They hate us now. They fear us. How do we turn that into something better?" Taiho considered the question. He had spent his life preparing for war. Peace was something he barely remembered. "We show them that we are more than warriors," he said finally. "We show them our art, our music, our dreams. We show them that the same species that created weapons of destruction also created things of beauty. We give them a reason on to believe in us." Yuna nodded slowly. "That is a good answer. I hope you are right." She turned away from the window and walked toward the door. There was work to be done. Meetings to attend? Decisions to make. The war was over, but the real challenge was just beginning. "Taiho," she said without turning around. "Thank you for everything, Admiral," he replied, and there was warmth in his voice. "It was my honor." The galaxy had changed. The old powers had fallen. A new era was beginning, and humanity stood at the center of it all. Carrying the weight of everything they had done and everything they still needed to do, this was their victory. Now they had to earn it. 6 months had passed since the Day of Broken Voices. The galaxy looked different now. The old Concordat was gone, replaced by something new, something still taking shape. On the station of Verith Prime, where the war had been declared, a new assembly was gathering. Ambassador Boyong Chai walked through the crystal halls alone. She was a small woman, barely reaching the chest of the shortest alien delegate. Her hair was gray, and her face was lined with age and experience. She had spent her entire life as a diplomat, believing that words could solve problems that weapons could not. Now, she had the chance to prove it. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from all 12 former Concordat species. They sat in silence as she entered. Some of them looked at her with hatred in their eyes. Others looked at her with fear. A few, a very few, looked at her with something that might have been curiosity. She stood at the center of the hall, the same place where High Chancellor Morvith had once condemned her species to death. She took a deep breath and began to speak. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice quiet but clear. "I know that many of you did not want to be here. I know that many of you still consider us enemies. I understand. We have given you good reason to fear us." She paused and looked around the room. The crystals in the walls caught the light and made patterns on the floor, just as they had when the war was declared. But everything else had changed. 6 months ago, your leaders voted to destroy us. They believed that humanity was a threat that needed to be eliminated. They believed that we were dangerous because we were different, because we were young, because we did not fit into the world they had built.
Oh.
Her voice grew stronger. They were wrong. Not wrong about us being dangerous. We are dangerous. We have always been dangerous. But they were wrong about what that danger meant. They saw us as enemies to be crushed. They never considered that we could be something else. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. She pressed a button, and images appeared in the air above the assembly. They were not images of war or weapons. They were images of Earth, forests and oceans, cities and farms, children playing and old people laughing. "This is our home," Boyang said. "This small blue world is where we came from. It is not a perfect place. We have made many mistakes there. We have hurt each other and hurt the world itself. But we have also learned. We have learned that destruction is easy and creation is hard. We have learned that hate is simple and love is complicated. We have learned that the greatest strength is not the ability to kill, but the ability to choose not to." She let the images fade and turned to face the Athrani delegation. They stared back at her with cold, hostile eyes. Their leader was dead. Their empire was broken. They had more reason than anyone to hate humanity. "I know what we did to you," she said directly to them. "I know that we killed your High Chancellor. I know that we destroyed your fleet and broke your power. I am not going to apologize for that. He gave us no choice. He declared war on our children and our future. We did what we had to do to survive." Her voice softened. "But I am sorry that it was necessary. I am sorry that we live in a universe where such things must happen. And I promise you this, we will not use our victory to become what you were. We will not build an empire on the ashes of yours. We will not enslave you or exploit you or treat you as less than what you are." She turned to address the entire assembly again. "We did not want this war. We came to the stars hoping to find friends. We hoped to learn from species older and wiser than ourselves. Instead, we found fear and hate. We found closed doors and hostile faces. For 200 years, we tried to prove that we were worthy of your respect. For 200 years, you rejected us." She shook her head slowly. "That ends today. Not because we have forced you to accept us, but because we are offering you something better. We are offering you partnership, real partnership between equals. We have things to teach you, and you have things to teach us. Together, we can build something that none of us could build alone." Elder Vethus of the Vorathi stood up. His 6 eyes blinked in a pattern that Boyang had learned to recognize as respect. "You speak of partnership," he said. "But how can we trust you? You defeated us through deception. You planted spies in our worlds and viruses in our systems. How do we know you will not do the same again?" Boyang nodded. It was a fair question. "You do not know," she admitted. "Trust cannot be demanded. It must be earned. All I can tell you is what we plan to do. We plan to share our technology with you freely. We plan to open our borders to your people. We plan to treat you with the respect that you never gave us." She smiled slightly. "And we plan to keep watching you. Not because we expect you to betray us, but because we are not fools. We know that peace is fragile. We know that old hatreds take a long time to die. We will be ready if you turn against us again. But we will also be ready to forgive if you choose a different path." The Kalthari representative stood up next. His metal body gleamed in the crystal light. "We believed ourselves superior to organic life," he said, his voice like grinding gears. "We were wrong. Your actions have shown us that strength comes in many forms. What do you want from us?" "We want you to teach us what you know," Boyang said. "Your people have perfected the art of working with metal and machines. Our people are still learning. Help us learn faster. And in return, we will teach you what we know about life and growth and change." One by one, the representatives asked their questions. Boyang answered each one honestly, without promises she could not keep or threats she would not carry out. She spoke for 2 hours, and when she was finished, she was exhausted but strangely at peace. "I cannot make you accept this offer," she said finally. "I cannot make you trust us or like us or believe that we mean what we say. All I can do is offer my hand and hope that you take it." She extended her hand, palm up, in the human gesture of peace. For a long moment, no one moved. The hall was silent except for the sound of distant stars singing through the crystal walls. Then Elder Vethus stood up. He walked slowly to where Boyang stood and placed one of his 6 hands against her palm. It was an awkward gesture, unfamiliar to both of them, but its meaning was clear. "We accept," he said simply. The Kelthari representative followed. Then the Oranai. Then, one by one, every representative in the chamber. Some came forward eagerly. Others came slowly, with doubt still written on their faces. But they all came. High above Vareth Prime, the silent dawn hung in orbit. Admiral Yuna watched the ceremony through long-range sensors. Beside her, Commander Taiho stood in silence. "Oh, she did it," he said quietly. "She actually did it." "Oh." "She gave them something we never could," Yuna replied. "She gave them hope. We taught them to fear us. She is teaching them to believe in us." She turned away from the screen and looked at her old friend. They had known each other for 20 years. They had fought together, bled together, won together. Now they faced something harder than any battle. "Do you think it will last?" Taiho asked. Yuna considered the question. Outside the window, the stars shone down on a galaxy that was slowly, painfully learning to be something new. "I do not know," she said honestly. "Humans have a saying, peace is harder than war. Building is harder than destroying. We won the easy part. Now comes the real work." She smiled, and for the first time in months, there was real warmth in her expression. "But I believe we can do it. If there is one thing humanity has always been good at, it is facing the impossible and refusing to give up. We have survived ice ages and plagues and nuclear weapons. We have survived ourselves. We will survive this too." On Vareth Prime, Ambassador Boyang Chai stood in the Crystal Hall, surrounded by the representatives of 12 species. For the first time in 50,000 years, the galaxy was truly united. Not through fear or conquest, but through choice. It would not be easy. There would be setbacks and disagreements, and moments when everything seemed about to fall apart. But they had taken the first step. They had chosen to believe that something better was possible, and that, in the end, was the most human thing of all. Not the ability to destroy, not the ability to conquer, but the ability to hope. The stars shone down on Vareth Prime, and the universe held its breath. Humanity took its place among the great powers of the galaxy, not as conquerors, not as destroyers, but as builders. And that made all the difference.